Hi, doing the sound check.
But I did receive it, but.
And after you received it, did you contact Mr. Boucher to schedule an interview?
No, it was something that had been passed or.
For sound check, you have to sing.
Oh, you don't want me to do that.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Claudia. Yes, we can.
Hi there.
Okay. Hi.
Okay, maybe you'll fall for this. I said for sound check, we need to hear you sing.
made it.
Okay, City Clerk, unfortunately, it looks like we have a quorum, so I guess we'll start this meeting. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Time is 4:02. Councilmember Bates will be absent. Councilmember Jimenez,
Present.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Present.
Councilmember Martinez,
Here?
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Here.
Councilmember Willis,
Here.
and Mayor Bud.
Here. Would you run the instructional video, please?
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted via Zoom pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Urgency Measure Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. The mayor will call upon council members, staff, and other guest speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Council members, staff, and guest speakers participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Community members participating via Zoom wishing to speak should use the raised hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the mayor or city clerk will call upon them at the appropriate time. Community members will have up to 2 minutes to speak, 3 minutes for public hearings. After the speaker's time expires, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Community members participating via phone will be called upon to speak by the last 4 digits of their phone number. Public input and participation are of the utmost importance to the City of Richmond City Council. Therefore, it is important for public speakers to be ready to address the council when called upon. Public speakers are requested to state their names and city of residence, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received before and during the meeting in accordance with the COVID-19 public comment guidelines printed on the meeting agenda will be entered into the record and published at the clerk's office webpage. If authors of written correspondence would also like to speak on the item, they should raise their hand when prompted by the mayor, and the city clerk will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. The meeting can be seen on KCRT's TV channel and is being streamed on Zoom, YouTube, and kcrt.com. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the City of Richmond City Council.
Debido a COVID-19, esta reunión se llevará a cabo a través de Zoom en conformidad con las provisiones de la medida de urgencia del gobernador de la Ley de la Asamblea 361, que suspende ciertos requisitos de la Ley Brown. El alcalde llamará a los concejales, a los empleados de la ciudad y a otros invitados a hablar por nombre. Por favor, hable claramente y diga su nombre antes de dar su comentario. Se recuerda a los concejales, empleados de la ciudad y otros invitados participando a través de Zoom con sus cámaras encendidas que sus actividades son visibles al público. Miembros de la comunidad participando a través de Zoom que deseen hablar deberían de usar la función levantar la mano, en inglés raise hand, o marcar *9 si están participando por teléfono. El alcalde y la secretaria municipal llamarán a los oradores en el momento apropiado. Miembros de la comunidad tendrán hasta 2 minutos para hablar y 3 minutos para temas de audiencias públicas. Después de que se expire el tiempo de orador, se le bajará la mano y el micrófono será silenciado. Miembros de la comunidad participando por teléfono serán llamados para su turno usando los últimos 4 dígitos de su número de teléfono. Los comentarios y la participación del público son de suma importancia para el Consejo Municipal. Por lo tanto, es importante que los oradores públicos estén listos para dar sus comentarios al Consejo Municipal cuando sean llamados. Se pide que los oradores públicos indiquen sus nombres y ciudad de residencia, pero proveer dicha información es voluntario. Comentarios escritos recibidos antes y durante la reunión, de acuerdo con las reglas designadas para comentario público durante el COVID-19, imprimidos en la agenda de la reunión, serán ingresados en el registro y se publicarán en la página web de la Secretaría Municipal. Si los autores de la correspondencia escrita también desean hablar sobre el tema, deberían levantar la mano cuando sea pedido por el alcalde, y la Secretaría Municipal los llamará en el momento apropiado. Se realizará una votación nominal para todos los puntos de acción. La reunión se podrá ver en el canal de televisión de KCRT y también se transmitirá en Zoom, YouTube y kcrt.com. Gracias por participar en una reunión de Consejo Municipal de la ciudad de Richmond.
Councilmember Bates is here.
Okay, thank you. Next item is statement of conflict of interest. Anybody have a conflict? Teresa?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item E1, I am the impacted employee, so I'm here on that item simply as the employee. Heather McLaughlin has and will continue to act as city attorney on that item.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, next item is agenda review. Any changes to the agenda?
Yes, I have a change. Item E6 will be continued to January 11th.
E6 continued,
Yes.
okay, all right.
And just for the record, Councilmember Bates, it looks like he's here
Yeah, I6 is continued, Madam Clerk, at whose request?
at the staff's request.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Heather, you got a hand up?
Just to remind you that you had a conflict on items E2, 3 and 4.
Thank you, Heather, but I disagree with you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, next item is item E1. Would you read that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, item E1 under council as a whole is to adopt a resolution commending outgoing city attorney Teresa Stricker for her service and professionalism and renouncing and condemning statements about the city attorney made by Mayor Tom Hunt.
Okay, this is sponsored by 3 council members. Would one of you like to introduce it?
I would like to introduce and then let other colleague to speak. So I want to take this opportunity to wish the best to City Attorney Teresa Stricker. I want to thank you personally for taking the time to explain and talk to me about city issues. Your willingness to spend time to discuss with me important and controversial issues demonstrate your professionalism. I learned a lot from you and I thank you. But we also decided to add this item in this agenda because the city attorney has suffered publicly the misogynist language used against her. When a city leader uses in public his or her privilege to denigrate a public servant, that should not be accepted. We should not accept that any woman in the city of Richmond can be treated like Ms. Stricker was treated in these meetings by the mayor. And I hope that we don't have to do more of this resolution in the near future. I want to say to Ms. Stricker that in my opinion, you are a very professional attorney. You are a competent attorney, and I am glad you were with us. And your clients will be lucky to have you. I wish you the best. Thank you. I don't know if my colleagues who are co-sponsoring this also have some things to say. Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez has a hand up. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I also want to commend Ms. Stryker for her professionalism and for her ability to remain above the fray when people were being less than professional. So she did not let that distract her from the job that she needed to do. I wanted to correct a typo. it says renounce, but the word should be denounce, a D instead of the R. Because we did not make these statements ourselves. So we are not renouncing them, we are denouncing them.
Councilmember Willis.
No, I just wanted to say real briefly, also thank you to Teresa, but main reason that I co-sponsored this item is because I did disagree profoundly with a lot of the comments made against city attorney's professionalism. And similar to what we did to our outgoing city manager, I want to make sure that there's a clear distinction between one member of this council's opinion rather than the whole board. And by passing this resolution, that, you know, just sides with her professionalism, her courtesy, and her in-depth way of giving out information and making sure we stay on track and still giving us breathing room to make the decisions that we need to make. So I am really sorry to see you go, Ms. Stricker, but I'm glad we had a chance to work with you in this year, and I wish you the best in whatever comes next for you. And also, you know, we still got the rest of this meeting. I'm gonna say happy holidays anyway.
Councilmember McLaughlin.
Yes, I also want to wish City Attorney Stricker the best. I have stated this to her personally in the past that I really, really appreciate her composure in the face of attacks and hostility. And I just want to reiterate that publicly. And also thank you for all the service you provided for the city of Richmond. I know sometimes we have had some disagreements, but I think they were always shared in a respectful way. And I think that's how discourse should be presented when people have different points of view and not in a hostile or attacking way. And I very much wish you the very, very best in whatever avenue of work. I know it will be as an attorney, but however your next job lines up for you, I hope it will be a wonderful, wonderful experience, and that your experience in Richmond brings something to that next job as well. Thank you, Teresa. I very much appreciate your service.
Anyone else? Do we have any public, Councilmember Bates?
Well, obviously, I'm confused because if I understand this correctly, the city attorney, part of her resignation, not getting terminated, but resignation, because she volunteered to resign, was that it was a matter dealing with Point Malati, whereby the 4 RPA individuals wanted her to abandon the city and join forces with the appellants who was suing the city. And at that point, she indicated that that was unethical. It was a violation of her oath to office as a city attorney, and thereby she could not do that and would not do that. And thus, in my observation, prompted her to resign. And now all of a sudden I hear the accolades from the very 4 individuals who put her in an embarrassing position where she was forced to resign. And now you're talking the accolades of how great she is. Well, you should not have put her in that position where she decided to resign in the first place. And that was the primary reason that she resigned. Now, naturally, I don't necessarily agree with my mayor. Anytime we have an employee and I take a position, whether they're good or bad, I never like to criticize them as they go out and seek employment elsewhere. I sort of thought that was, well, it was inappropriate for me, but it may not be inappropriate for other people. And obviously, I wish all of our employees, whether they resign or get terminated or what, I wish them all the very best. And I give accolades to their tenure as a city employee in terms of their contribution. So naturally, Mrs. Strickler is no different than any other employee. I wish her the very best of success as she pursue employment down the road. And I indicated to her, and as well as the city manager, Laura, that down the road, you'll look back and you probably look at these situations as a blessing in disguise, because you're probably going to find a job where you're happier. It's not a stressful job, and you can perform to the best of your ability. So I wish Ms. Strickler the very best, but I'm confused in terms of how is it that 4 of you can give all these accolades, yet you put her in a position where she felt she had no alternative other than to resign. So that's my statement, and best of luck to you, Mrs. Strickler.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Yes, I'm not going to get too far into criticism of my colleagues. But what I will say is no one person, brought about this resignation. So if you think it was one person, I would suggest we all take a harder look at our participation and how we interacted with the city attorney. But this isn't about my colleagues. This is about Teresa. And I think Teresa was a fantastic city attorney. She tried her best to, represent the city and do everything that she could on our behalf. It's quite sad that she wasn't able to meet her full potential here in the city of Richmond. But I do hope, wherever she lands, that, that she'll be able to spread her wings a little bit further out than what she was able to do here. And, good luck. And yeah, I know, things are hectic at home with college admissions for your daughter and everything. And, you're running around. So, good luck with everything. And I hope, it all shakes out for the best.
Just so you know, you're muted, Mayor.
Sorry, Councilmember Willis.
Yeah, no, just a quick response. This is just my own personal opinion. I think just in general, the culture and contention on the council over a variety of issues as a whole, my opinion, not saying anything else, but just as a whole, and how we clash creates an atmosphere that makes folks not want to be here. And going forward, we need to work on that collectively as a team. But more importantly than that, I know that there were some very direct personal attacks that we were all bear witness to not too long ago. And the purpose of this resolution is separating those comments to how we all feel as a board with her, so she can go forward with her professional reputation without any, let's say, slander against her name. But that's all only comment I want to say.
Okay, do we have any public speakers?
Yes, we have 2 public speakers.
Okay, go ahead and call them up.
Okay, we have Terry Hint and Mark Wasberg. I'll go ahead and start with Terry Hint. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Terry Hinty, Richmond resident, with a message for the sponsors of this item. Grow up. Claudia, grow up. Melvin, grow up. Eduardo, you're the elder in this group, and it's way past time for you to grow up. Enough with the games and stunts. When you guys are on the dais, you are there to do the people's business. You need to leave your petty personal grudges at the door. We don't want to hear about them. Don't waste our time with them. Don't embarrass yourselves, and don't embarrass the residents of this city, your constituents. Richmond is on the ropes right now, and it's pathetic to see you indulging in drama queen language, like commending versus condemning and renouncing or denouncing, whatever. All you're doing is creating and fomenting unnecessary division. District 6 calling Claudia. We'd love to hear of your plans to revitalize the San Pablo Avenue Business District, where our post office was just broken into and a large anchor business is about to close its doors. We're all ears, but spare us this juvenile BS about censuring colleagues who disagree with you. Stop projecting your own reckless, Brown Act violating behavior onto other people. Grow up already. I yield my time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mark Wasberg. Mark, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Well, I have a job for the lawyer. If she wants to help me file a lawsuit in federal court against McLaughlin and Tom Butt. Oh, Mr. Mayor, you bragged about me kicking me out of the city council meeting. So I need to go back and look at the videos because you violated my First Amendment rights and you know it. I did nothing wrong. I just totally speak my piece. And yet this sweat hog pig, McLaughlin, she ended up kicking me out, said I didn't have the right to speak. Now, on this RPA thing, it doesn't matter what the people say. The RPA is going to stick to themselves. They're a bunch of criminals and gangsters, and I'm surprised that the attorney didn't have a horse's head in her bed. The reason why she's leaving because she's not playing ball with the RPA. The RPA are going to stick to their own agenda. They don't care about anybody else. I mean, you people, if you people don't get it by now, you will never get it. It's always the RPA against the mayor and Nat. It's always been like that since it happened. So the attorney, I said we could go to federal court and file that lawsuit, and I will guarantee I will make you a lot of money because I'm gonna totally bankrupt that sweat hog pig McLaughlin, and I might give you the benefit of the doubt, Mr. Mayor, but still you're gonna be on my list on a lawsuit because I got all the evidence I need. You see, you people don't get it. The RPA don't respect anybody but themselves. This is why it's always the RPA against the mayor. It's always RPA against Nat. You see what I'm saying? They're like a gang of thugs, like a den of wolves. They all stick together like organized crime. They're applauding you, and then they're stabbing you back at the same time. They're making an offer you can't refuse. You see what I'm saying? This is why the attorney's leaving, because she would not play ball with the RPA. They told her, if you don't play ball with us, actually it's McLaughlin. She's the ringleader of the whole RPA.
Time has expired. The next speaker is Lisa Cody. Lisa, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hi, yeah, my name is Lisa Cody. I'm actually calling in personally, even though I am a researcher with SEIU 1021. I am horrified by the treatment of staff in council meetings by the mayor. And I have never in my life of observing council meetings in 50 different cities seen such horrific personal attacks, denigrating language, and unprofessionalism in my life. And so I applaud the council members for this action. And those who think this is about being petty, if you're a staff member in the city of Richmond, most of them would, I'm sure, represent to the public that their lives are quite difficult. They have a very stressful job. And then to do their jobs and be treated with the disrespect that they get by the mayor, it's inexcusable. So I just want to applaud the council members for this action and state that, there is recognition that this is irresponsible and unacceptable behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more public speakers.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I'll get the last word on this. I wouldn't have said anything about the city attorney's departure, except that you guys felt it necessary to bring this resolution and call me out on it. So I'll just say what I've been saying all the time. Teresa Stricker has been a horrible city attorney. She's done a great disservice to this city. She's put the city at great risk, and I'm really glad to see her gone. So with that, if somebody wants to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll move the item.
I second it.
Okay, call the roll, Madam Clerk.
I want to put a
Okay, go ahead,
substitute.
Councilmember
I want
Bate.
a substitute motion. I would acknowledge the city attorney's performance with the elimination of condemning the mayor, whatever you denouncing the mayor or whatever. And I say that because there is a First Amendment that allows all individuals a right to express themselves, whether you're a private citizen or you're elected official. And we witnessed that with Mr. Wasberg. He has a right to say what he wants to say. There's no reason why elected officials should be censored for saying what they feel. That's their privilege, whether you agree with it or not. We still live in a democratic society where the First Amendment right applies to every American citizen in this country. So my substitute motion is that I'm supportive of acknowledging Mrs. Strickland, but I'm not supportive of condemning and denouncing the mayor. So that's my substitute motion.
Is there a second? I don't hear a second. Motion dies for lack of a second, but thank you for trying that. So let's do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bates,
No.
Councilmember Jimenez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
and Mayor Butt.
No.
The motion passes with Councilmember Bate and Mayor Butt voting no.
Okay, you want to call item E2, please?
Item E2 is to approve a $40,000 amendment to the legal services agreement with the law firm of Burke, Williams, and Sorensen LLP for general, municipal, and personnel matters for a total amount not to exceed $140,000.
Is there a staff report?
Yes, would you like a long staff report or a short staff report? This is just part of our continuing effort to keep the legal services agreements up to date and on par. As you know, the city attorney's office has been working hard to implement better procedures so that we can stay ahead of the legal services agreements and keep them current in terms of term and in terms of payment amounts. So this is one that needs to have an update, and it has been split apart into two items, one for this work and then the second part, which is a separate item, which was split apart because of the conflict that the mayor has.
Are there any questions from council members?
I have a question. I'd like a little bit more definition in terms of what work you have reference to.
Yes, so this work under here is a bunch of personnel work in the main part, general personnel services where they are giving us advice to help out with personnel matters, plus a little general municipal law.
Does this pertain to legal action against the city by employees or whomever?
It could be potential legal action by employees, but also potential personnel related matters that won't generate into legal matters.
The reason I asked the question is that I think both of these items probably should be discussed at the same time. Now, if a person file a complaint against the city, the response then is for you to get a legal staff, outside firm to do the investigation and so forth. And that costs the city significant amount of money. Am I incorrect or am I correct in this process?
So in the famous legal words, it depends. It depends on what the complaint that the employee files. Many things are handled in-house. For example, Bruce Soublé handles a lot of the HR matters, and we don't need to go to the outside legal world to get help. But if a matter is more complex or potentially would result in more damages for the city, then we often go and seek outside legal counsel help.
Okay, the reason I asked the question is that if there is improprieties on the part of a manager, whomever, our elected official toward an employee, why are we not utilizing the outside resources? For example, if a policeman is involved in a serious shooting or so forth, as a staff, we don't get involved. We refer that to outside individuals, such as the district attorney or the grand jury, or even if necessary, the attorney general. So why are we investigating ourselves when we should refer those to impartial? And the reason I said it is that when we investigate individuals within the department by staff and so forth, we create such an acrimony and anger and hostility within the department. Whereas if an impartial person is doing that investigation, it's a lot, what you might say, impartial, and hopefully a lot fairer. So that's my question as it relates to why we're not referring these things out to the various agencies that are assigned to do an impartial investigation.
So in the example you provided, those agencies would also be involved, but the city, from a city standpoint, has a responsibility to take care of any employee problems if there are employee problems. And so we would hire somebody to assist us with that. So sometimes there'll be multiple folks involved in one incident because they're wearing different hats.
Well, I still don't understand why, if there's a serious complaint against an elected official, that it is not referred to the district attorney's office for a full investigation, just as we refer a police action, a serious action, to the DA, to whomever agencies. I don't understand the differentiation between responding in one way when a police officer does involve an incident, as opposed to when employees or elected officials are involved in an incident. Can you give me an explanation why you're not following the same protocol we do with police officers?
Yes, so there is a difference between elected officials and employees. So the procedures can be slightly different.
Yeah, but for an example, we spent over $100,000 on this Tom Butt investigation. Whereas, in my opinion, it should have been referred to the district attorney, and we would not have, the taxpayers would not have incurred that amount. Plus, we would have got an impartial outcome. I would think. They have nothing, they just do it as an automatic process. But when we have staff involved in doing that, there can be influences here or there or whatever. And that's the question I'm asking. We're getting ready to continue spending money, as I understand, on a continuation of an investigation.
No, Council Member Bates, that is not the purpose of this legal services agreement.
Well, okay, I got them confused because we got, I think, 3 legal service agreements, and one of them pertained to the mayor and one pertained to something else and so forth.
Yeah, this agreement has nothing to do with what you're
okay, well,
talking
I'll
about.
wait, but we do have one coming up that pertains to the legal cost for investigating the mayor. Am I not correct?
Maybe you're referring to item 4, which is the lawsuit.
Okay, I'll wait for item 4.
Okay, and if you would like more explanation on the difference between the police services and things like that, we could have Anil Camillo speak as well.
Okay, well, if this is just dealing with internal problems, without the complicated ones down the road, personnel matters and cleaning up your books and so forth.
Right.
I still don't understand why we don't have staff aboard that can't do that by just researching what other cities are doing and not having to pay somebody to come in here and $140,000, $50,000, $80,000 and do a work that is just copying other cities' procedures and personnel practices. But seem like we just have to go
Yes.
out and spend money.
Yeah, sorry, this is not developing procedures and policies. It's advising on specific instances.
Okay,
So-
well, okay.
Any other questions from council members? Do we have any public speakers?
We do not.
No, we do not. Oh, we do have one.
Okay, go ahead and call the public speaker.
I don't see a hand.
I see Alex Mazuet.
I can go ahead and unmute them, but I don't see the hand. Oh, go ahead. Alex.
Oh, okay, I don't see the hand anymore either. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
no speakers.
Okay, but before we move on this, I'm going to tell you why I oppose it. This is a part of an ongoing practice. I'm going to even call it a conspiracy by the city attorney and the city manager to evade and circumvent the charter. The charter provides that the city manager can contract, has a contracting authority not to exceed $10,000. And that's recognized in both the charter and the Richmond Municipal Code. What happens is that when they want to spend more than $10,000, the city manager will execute a contract for $10,000. And then later on, after they get the whole thing started, they'll come back to the city council for the remainder of it. This is called piecemealing. And it's a practice that's frowned upon. You know, it comes up a lot in CEQA. You know, in CEQA, there's a clear understanding that you can't piecemeal a project. You can't do an EIR on some small part of it when you know that it's actually something bigger. So in my opinion, the way the city manager and city attorney are handling this is illegal and it's unethical, and I can't support it. So if there are no other comments,
I want to get the total amount of the contract.
well, the total amount is $100,000. If you add up the 40,000 in E2 and the 50,000 in E3, and then you add up the 10,000 that the city manager's already contracted for, you have at least $100,000. It may be more.
You have $140,000.
Okay, 140,000.
And Mayor, it is not at all like that. The charter does have a requirement that any contract over 10,000 be brought to the city council. The city attorney has been very diligent since she arrived in bringing contracts to the council. That was not the past practice before. And so we are trying to improve upon that. And this is why you are receiving a lot of these contracts for approval. With a lot of legal services, while the initial contract might be $10,000, we don't always know what the full extent of the contract is going to be. That could be because the people in litigation against the city are particularly aggressive or have particularly lame papers, and we have to generate more and more responses. So some things we can't control, some things we can control to some extent. But in most legal cases, we have to do that initial contract at the staff level because the work requires immediate attention. For example, when we have a lawsuit, we have a limited period of time in which we can respond. And so we start out with a $10,000 contract and then come to the council for additional amendments to get us over to a proper amount that may get us where it is. You can see on some of these agreements, like the ones for Point Mulate and Campus Bay, where we think that it may be an initial estimate of, say $10, but then it becomes a lot more as work proceeds. We have to come back again to you for an amendment. And so that's what we do. You'll see on your next agenda for the 21st, we have a couple of those contracts that also require additional work. To help us mitigate this problem in the future and not drag you all down with so many contract amendments, we went out for that RFQ, and that will be on your next agenda. So we are hoping that you will approve contracts with various law firms so that we can do it like we do for the public works projects, where you have an on-call engineer or on-call recruitment services and things like that. And we could enter into it at a staff level contracts of a certain amount, provided that there's budgetary funds to do so. So we are trying to make this process more smooth for staff, more smooth for the council, and actually get work done without getting bogged down by having to do these contract amendments repeatedly. So this is part of the process to try and improve the process. It is not a violation of the charter. It's trying actually to make it better.
Well, Ms. McLaughlin, like Councilmember Bates said, the First Amendment applies to all of us, and you're welcome to your opinion, but I totally disagree with you. I think what you're doing is illegal and unethical, and it's basically a conspiracy to circumvent the requirements of the charter. So,
sir, it is not illegal and it is not unethical.
well, I told you,
You as the council member are free to.
You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to mine.
Exactly. And you can choose to ignore our legal opinion or not.
Okay, so is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
A second.
Okay, motion by Willis, second by Martinez. Call the roll, please.
Well, I didn't get a clear
I'm sorry, go
understanding.
ahead, Councilmember Bates.
The refusal of approving this contract represents what, Madam Attorney?
That work would have to stop on this agreement, and that there is a little bit of work that's already been done that's exceeded the budget that we would finish off. Since this item was originally placed on an earlier agenda, I know that we had not exceeded our not to exceed amount, but I suspect.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, call the roll, please, for a vote.
Councilmember Bates,
Yes.
Councilmember Jimenez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
and Mayor Butt.
No.
The motion passes with Mayor Butt voting no.
Okay, call the next, read the next item, please, Madam Clerk, item E3.
Item E3 is to approve, one, a $50,000 amendment to the legal service agreement with the law firm of Burke, Williams, and Sorensen, LLP, for general, municipal, and personnel matters for a total amount not to exceed $100,000. And two, an additional appropriation of $50,000 from the general fund to pay for a portion of the second contract amendment.
All right, so this is a contract amendment with Burke, Williams, and Sorensen. It perhaps could have been brought as a separate new contract, but that's not the way that we've been doing the contracts. This one, the mayor has a conflict on under the common law for conflicts because it involves the lawsuit where his son is suing the city over the encroachments on Western Avenue. And according to the paperwork that was presented with the lawsuit, the mayor will be called as an adverse witness, it appears. So that's why we recommended that he recuse himself from this item. I could go longer if you want.
Any questions from council? Okay, do we have any speakers?
Well, let me ask the question. Are you telling me that a simple lawsuit filed by an individual automatic triggers outside counsel, that we do not have anybody on the staff that is capable of litigating, or at least doing the first phase of the litigation before we go and hire high-priced attorneys?
So that's an excellent question. And it may be that at some point in time, the office will be able to litigate simple cases. I think based on the paperwork here that this is not a simple case, but given the vacancies and staffing that we currently have in the office, there is not the capability, the time to litigate cases in-house. It may be later on once things calm down that we're able to do that, but at this point in time, we would not be able to do it.
Well, but Madam City Attorney, my experience and observation is that when a lawsuit of this nature is filed, the first thing you do is you sit and you try to negotiate. And you just give and take, and see if you can come to a compromise. And once you can't come to a compromise, that is when you go and hire the gun, so-called speak. And we haven't even seemingly sat down and tried to negotiate anything. I don't understand why all of a sudden we have to go and spend and do a hired gun when we can maybe negotiate and don't cost anything.
Yes, certainly the city will attempt to negotiate, but under the law, we have 30 days to respond to the complaint. And that does require us to do a little initial research that the outside counsel will do. This case also involves the mayor's son. He's the attorney on the opposing side. So I think it's a little more than a simple answer that needs to be filed.
All right, thank you.
This is, so this is E3, right?
Yes.
And I look closely at the paperwork. I mean, I look closely at the staff report on E3. And I didn't see anything that had my name on it. Can you point out to me where I'm mentioned in this item?
I think just skimming the report, you're correct. I don't see it in this copy of the report, but that is what these services are for.
Well, I would think if you wanted to make a point that somehow I was involved in this, you'd spell it out and write it out. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what what your intent is, but I certainly don't see my name mentioned anywhere in this item. So anyway, I see Councilmember Jimenez, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. Because I emailed you, Heather, about like why we need to be in these. And one of the things that like for me is like we got a lawsuit first. So now if we wouldn't have that lawsuit, how this could be a negotiation that won't cause that? Like what could be the process so that we can get what Councilmember Bates said about a negotiation instead of that. That is one thing. And the other thing is that Mayor said that he is not in that lawsuit, but there is the court denied the mayor's motion to intervene in his individual capacity in this, and it's public, like the court order and notice of appeals are public documents. So you are part of that. It's not here, but you are part of that.
Yes, that actually is item E4. And I may have switched items E2 and E3. So, but the one with the court order and the appeal is E4.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
And I forgot the first part of your question.
I think you're confused, Ms. McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Any other questions from council members?
No, I just had my question, and she hasn't answered.
Okay, Teresa, go ahead. You have your hand up. You're muted.
You're muted.
I was going to comment on an earlier comment, and then Heather, if you want to answer Jimenez's question. Mr. Mayor, you're named in the writ petition, which is essentially the complaint that was filed in court, and multiple provisions of it. You've been provided with a copy of that. We've had discussions about that. You initially said you were going to recuse. You have changed your mind. The writ petition sets forth claims against the city on behalf of 3 private citizens represented by your son. Those claims you yourself outlined on your e-forum. Your e-forum is cited in the complaint. You are a hostile witness against the city in the case that your son is prosecuting against the city. That is item E3. Item E4 is a different item, and that is the lawsuit that the city has filed against the mayor, which we are not discussing at this moment, but is the next up. So with that, Heather, do you want to address the council member's specific question?
You're muted, Heather.
I would love to address her question, but I actually forgot it. Would you mind re-asking it?
Yeah, Council Member Bates make a comment about how this could get in a settlement or a dialogue, but now we have a lawsuit. So how this could have been a dialogue, so the city could have not been in this situation of spending money in defending the city.
Yes, whenever we know that there's a loss, potential for a lawsuit, we try to negotiate those ahead of time and see if we can mitigate the damages and or prevent a lawsuit from happening. This one, I think everyone realized that there were issues soon, but we were unable to negotiate anything right away. But as soon as we file an answer, we will be trying to work something out.
I will just say that we have had discussions with the attorney on the other side, Daniel Butt. We've had a number of conversations with him. We also negotiated a bit of an extension to respond. We do need to bring someone on that can respond. Our hope is that we can reach an amicable resolution in this case, but it is what it is. And I believe this item will be coming to you in closed session next week. But in the meantime, we do need to get someone on board. The paperwork is due in the latter part of January, and the work needs to be done in advance. If you don't approve this contract now, it will be too late to meet that deadline.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Yeah, just follow up with that. What will be the consequences if the city council doesn't approve this for the city?
Heather, you want to take that?
If we don't approve the agreement, well, we could perhaps cobble together an answer, but it's not going to be very good and timely. The workload that we have is quite extensive. You know, if you want somebody else, we could try and get somebody else on board, but none of those options are really great at this moment.
This commits to a legal services agreement, which allows us to pay for services, but the services don't happen unless we direct that they happen. And so to the extent we're able to reach some settlement, we don't end up paying here. But this allows us to get the attorneys on board who can do the work and represent the city. The city does have an obligation to file a responsive pleading by the deadline. We are actually hoping that the other side will agree to revise its amended complaint. There are some defects in that complaint we have pointed out to the attorney on the other side. He has not decided whether he's going to voluntarily amend or force us to file a pleading, which will then result in a court order requiring them to essentially amend. So please understand that there have been conversations on our end. We really do need to get an attorney on board, but that attorney won't be doing anything that is not directed by the city attorney's office.
Any other questions from council members? Are there any public speakers?
We have one public speaker.
Go ahead and call the public speaker.
Okay, I have Mark Wasberg. Mark, you will have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hey, this doesn't look, hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
This doesn't look good at all. Here you have the mayor's son suing the city. You have the mayor's son working for the city. Then you got the mayor, he's a spokesman for the city. That's just like his own family suing each other. You ever heard of conflict of interest? You cannot have family members suing the city. It doesn't look good at all. It looked like you guys a bunch of gangsters or something, you know? I mean, the ethical, the morality of the whole entire thing is like the Butt family ganging up on the city of Richmond. I mean, this is ludicrous. I mean, it looks like organized crime. I don't see how you could have any guilt. You got to have some type of guilt. Having your son suing the city, having your son working for the city, and you're the mayor. You're supposed to be for the city. You're supposed to respect the city. But the RPA members, you don't have to respect them because they don't believe in no law anyway. So they're just implementing their own type of government. But if I stand corrected, I heard that the attorney says that Butt's going to be a witness. The mayor's going to be a witness against the city. If I stand corrected, I mean, come on, man. I mean, this is like it's like a soap opera. I don't see how you people could do this stuff. Don't you have any guilt? Have any shame? Are you supposed to be a law-abiding, respectable citizens, a role model? And then you have the Butt family doing this? It's just unbelievable. Tom, you're the father. You have to lay down the law. I don't care how old your sons are. The bottom line is you call the shots. If they don't listen to daddy, well, daddy's going to get pissed off. I mean, I was in my 50s and I still had to obey my father. See what I'm saying? I don't see how you could do this, man. It's just unbelievable. Wait till the whole thing gets out in public, because you don't care anyway, Mr. Mayor, because you're out of office anyway. This is getting ridiculous, man. I mean, I don't see how this could really happen. I don't see how you can allow this to happen. I don't know, man. I mean, it just puzzles the hell out of me. This stuff could happen. I yield my time.
Thank you. There are no more speakers.
I'm
Okay,
having an issue.
any further comments from council members? I don't see any. I'll say what I said on the last one, and that is that, in my opinion, this is a conspiracy to evade and circumvent the city charter and the Richmond Municipal Code, and I can't support it. So, do we have a motion?
I move the item.
Okay, motion by Martinez,
I'll second it.
second by Willis. Would you roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bates,
I'm not voting.
Councilmember Jimenez,
Fortunately, we had to say yes. Yes.
and Vice Mayor Johnson. Vice Mayor Johnson. He's absent. Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
and Mayor Butt.
No.
The motion passes with Mayor Butt voting no, Councilmember Bates abstaining, and Vice Mayor Johnson is absent.
Okay, would you read item E4?
Item E4 is to approve a $75,000 amendment to the legal services agreement with the law firm of Myers Nave LLP, for general municipal law advice and litigation for a total amount not to exceed $85,000, and 2, an additional appropriation of $75,000 from the general fund to pay for the first contract amendment.
Any questions from council members?
I'd like for the city attorney to explain this additional amount and what was the cost and the performance of the work for the first 75,000 or thereabouts.
Right. So this is the agreement for the legal services being provided to the city to assist with the lawsuit against the mayor for disclosing confidential information attorney-client information. So we've had part of the hearings. We will continue to have other hearings. The initial 10,000 got us the initial case analysis, but we're up against the 75,000, and I expect that we will have another amendment to bring before you all if the case continues to generate the controversy and expenses that it currently is generating. For example, we spent more on having the mayor serve than we expected because it appeared he was trying to evade service. So we need additional funds for this one, and it's clearly not one that we can bring in-house.
So let me ask you this. Assuming you go through all this process, and I guess the court finds the mayor guilty, are we reimbursed $100 and some thousand? What's the predicament outcome?
Well, hopefully the predicted outcome will be that the mayor removes the offending material from his blogs. Possibly we could go and recover a cost against him, but I think that probably is doubtful.
So we spent $175, maybe $200,000, and the results, hopefully, if the councilors or this city council want, is that he removed information from his website that has already been disseminated. You can't wipe out people's mind that have read this 3 and 4 times over. So we spent all this money for what?
Right, to protect the attorney-client privilege and to protect the confidentiality of material. Some of the material he disclosed was clearly not appropriate for public disclosure.
Well,
as council members, you get a lot of information that is confidential. Either it's analysis of cases or personnel matters. And any of those people who have been included in the mayor's blog could potentially sue the city. This is one way to help mitigate the damages in that case, to show that the city has taken appropriate action.
okay, well, again, I don't agree with it, but the votes are there, so I'll just vote no. Thank you.
Councilmember Willis.
Yeah, just a follow up, only because I'm just was a little confused. I know we did the resolution to refer this to the DA and grand jury, and you started to talk about why the city is having to get involved a little bit. Could you elaborate a little bit more? Because in my brain, it's like, okay, we referred it to them. They got the information so they can handle it. Why are we still involved past that?
Yes, the city is still involved in it because, total brain fade here. City is still involved in it because the action with the DA and grand jury may or may not result in immediate action taken. And Teresa is going to say a little bit more.
So as you may recall, Councilmember Willis, that we had a closed session on this item, and the council directed that the city attorney do a couple of things. One is, as you said, you passed a resolution. It was a censure resolution and an item directing me to report the matter to the grand jury and the DA. There was another direction given, and it was reported out. And that direction was to initiate litigation against the mayor, which is what we did. That was pursuant to a council direction, and that direction was publicly reported out in open session. And so that's what we did last week. We obtained a temporary restraining order against the mayor, and the mayor has since filed another motion, which was heard on Monday. There's a preliminary injunction hearing coming up at the end of the month. The mayor has also filed an appeal from a ruling that happened on Monday. And so all of that is causing the amount to go up. And so not only do we have the anticipated amount that we're asking here, but you're going to end up seeing another item coming back from the city attorney's office for more funding because of the way it's being litigated on the other side by the mayor and his attorney. And again, the mayor needs to be recused from this item. He has a clear common law conflicts problem. You can't have the party on the other side of the litigation weighing in on how much and who to hire in order to prosecute the case against him. So this is entirely separate from the DA and the grand jury item. You directed multiple things, and that's what we have done.
Okay, yes, thank you for the reminder and clarity.
Rest. Rest.
Councilmember Martinez.
Yes, I'm voting for this because I see this as a measure that will save the city money by protecting the city's legal interest in ongoing major litigation with millions of dollars at stake. So because we have a city official who's violating the city's privilege and contractions of duties to his office and divulging advice of the city's key legal advisor, including advice on high-stakes federal litigation, for all to see, the city must respond proactively to defend ourselves, to defend the city against unethical and illegal behavior that jeopardizes our financial well-being. And the very fact that the mayor is refusing to recuse himself further illustrates how much of an outlaw he's trying to be. Might I ask what sort of repercussions there would be against someone who refuses to recuse themselves when they should have been?
Oops, muted myself. Hopefully in this case, there will be enough votes to approve the agreement, so his vote won't matter. In other cases, if it were a Political Reform Act conflict of interest, there are criminal potential actions, civil actions, and fines. So common law, I think we'd have to bring another suit against him.
Anybody else on the council have questions or comments? Do we have any speakers, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have one speaker.
Guess who?
Yes, Mark Fosberg.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call Mark Wasberg. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Yeah, that's right. You know, if the mayor broke the law, then why don't you file a complaint with the DA? I don't care how much money it costs. If the man broke the law, then file. And you and Aguado, you're so damn stupid. You talk about justice. Yeah, what about my fucking constitutional rights? Huh? What about my First Amendment? You try to shut me down. Talk about that, huh? You idiot. Man, this is so dumb. You people are fighting over. You know what a grand jury is? I'm gonna tell you what a grand jury is. It's a bunch of average citizens that don't know a damn thing about law. And all they're going to do is listen to the prosecutor, and then they're going to agree with them. That's what a grand jury is. I know it sounds so sophisticated. It sounds so legal. It sounds like, oh man, this is Supreme Court. But they're just a bunch of clowns on it. That's all they are. A grand jury, just a bunch of average citizens. You could have a garbage man. You could have Joe Blow. Anybody. But like I say, man, if the guy broke the law, then file charges. I don't give a rat's ass about how much money it is. But the mayor could always run to his son. His son's a lawyer. I mean, this is, man, all you guys are just a bunch of damn criminals. It's just amazing. You guys talk about money. You guys talk about all this fancy legal bullshit. Well, just go to the DA and file charges. If you find them guilty, then the DA is gonna prosecute them. Right? And you're going to get prosecuted too, because you over there violating my fucking rights, dude. You talk about being honest and all that other crap. You guys are a bunch of criminals yourself. Now, what fucking time do you ever even obey our constitutional laws? Not one damn time. Yeah, what'd you talk about, Aguado? Because you're too stupid to do anything. Why don't you tell the people how dumb you are? You probably was in that classroom with Jerry's kids and wearing them football helmets. That's how stupid you are, Aguado.
Time has expired. Thank you. No more speakers.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council members? I don't see any. I had a couple of comments. One is, I went through this item. I read it over and over again. I never saw my name mentioned in it. So it would seem to me that if this is about me, somebody would have taken the time to write that down. Second thing, this is like the last two items. In my opinion, it's part of a conspiracy to evade and circumvent the city charter and the Richmond Municipal Code. So, Ms. McLaughlin, you have your hand up.
So Mayor, we will in the future be a little bit more explicit when we can on that, but you may recall that I sent you at least 2 emails and had one conversation with you about these agenda items.
Well, it would have been nice to write it down. You know, there's, you know, documenting something. There's a lot of value to documenting something rather than just talking about it.
Oh, yes. So that's why I used the email.
Yeah, Councilor McLaughlin.
I just want to say that I see a line in here in the statement of the issue on the agenda report that this amendment relates to recently authorized litigation against Mayor Butt and so requires Mayor Butt's recusal on the matter. So there is a line about it in there. I just wanted to mention that.
It's in the agenda report.
Yes.
I don't, it's not in mine.
An understatement of the issue, we're talking about the Myers Nave, correct?
Right.
Look
Oh, yeah,
under,
right, okay, recent authorized litigation. Okay, I stand corrected. Okay, Councilmember Bates. You need to unmute yourself.
I'm unclear. And I hear the city attorney indicating as we go through this process, it's going to cost us close to $200,000. And I want the city attorney to indicate to me if I'm incorrect. And of that $200,000 of expenditure of taxpayers' dollars, and the result of it is a slap on the wrist to the mayor, if that, but no monetary reimbursement. Am I misstating the potential?
Yeah. Just the staff.
Vice Mayor, you're unmuted.
Am I misstating the potential, Madam City Attorney, that all of this expenditure fund, close to $200,000, we get nothing in return except sanctions of the mayor? And if you really wanted to do that, all you had to do was vote 4-0 or 4-5 or 2 or whatever to sanction them right here and there, and you wouldn't have to spend $200,000 in doing so. Now, I'm trying to equate the cost versus the results.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, part of the goal of this litigation is to get him to remove the offending items from his blog, which creates additional liability for the city from various employees and other folks. So that is the main goal. Whether we get a fine or other things, those are decisions that can be made later.
But the information is already out there. It's been out there for, Tom been doing these emails for 10, 12 years. How do you go back and retract something that's been out there for 10 and 8, 5, 6, 3, 2 years?
Certainly we can't go back to we can't do a whole lot about the stuff that's been out there for years and years, but we can do stuff about the stuff that's more recent, and we can reduce the city's liability in that regards. And Teresa Stricker's here to say a little bit more.
Teresa, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Bates and Heather McLaughlin. I just want to point out that restraining order against the mayor requires him to take down the 2 items that he posted in November. It doesn't go back in years. The other piece of the restraining order that is really important is it orders him not to do it again. In other words, it's an order that says that in a going forward basis, you can't publish or disclose the contents of written attorney-client privileged communications. Those are really important to the operations of the city so that your legal staff can provide you all with the legal advice that you all need to have to do your job. And we can do so understanding that our candid legal advice to you is not going to be pushed out for all the public to see. And it's incredibly important to make sure that you have the candid advice from the attorneys and that we're not doing more harm to the city going forward by disclosing that information on a going forward basis. So there are 2 parts to that order. They're both really important and really critical. That order is a temporary order. The court, by virtue of the quickness with which we went in and got the order, the court always will set a longer time and allow both parties to fully brief the issue. And the issue will be addressed on the merits after both parties have briefed it at the end of the month. So that's the process, that's the order. Depending on what happens, there may be an opportunity for us to get attorney's fees, but we would have to look at that later. At this point, we're going in order to protect the city on a going forward basis to make sure that as your new city attorney is onboarding and as you're transitioning here, that the city can feel comfortable having its legal team provide written confidential attorney-client privileged information that every private entity, every private individual knows that they can communicate freely with their counsel. But here we have a member of the city council that is selectively pushing some of that out to the public. And so that's the difficulty, that's the problem. It's about protecting the city. And that was the direction that you all gave to us, again, in closed session last month.
Do you have more, Councilmember Bates?
No, I'm finished.
Okay, Councilmember Willis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, the only response I had, just, respect Councilmember Bates's perception on the issue, and there are some parts of the perception where on a personal level, I actually agree with him. But regardless of the individual, I think it does set a bad precedent objectively that if folks are sending or using confidential documents and information for whatever the case may be, when it's not supposed to be disseminated, and if we don't check that or try to discourage that from happening in the future, it just sets a bad precedent for anybody on this council or future councils just to take information and share it because they're going to be like, what's going to happen if I do, or what's going to happen if I don't. Frankly, I wish we weren't even talking about this, and I wish it wasn't an issue today. But unfortunately, from all the documents and things I've seen from staff and discussions that we've had with outside counsel, it's just kind of like puts us in a rock and a hard place. So I just wanted to introduce that as just another perspective and how my brain is churning on this, but I actually don't disagree with a lot of what Councilmember Bates said, on a personal matter, but just for the organization as a whole, it's a different story.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Willis. I think this is not as an attack as an individual. It's a process that we should follow, and we are bounded by the rules. And it's not okay that because a person has been doing it for years and years that we allowed to continue it. And this is something that our city attorney is working with us to make us realize that, yeah, this is not okay. And as we transition to another city attorney, we want to make sure that we set up things in place so that the work of the new city attorney, the work of the city attorney's office is is easier and is professional, because it's not okay that they had to always think about how I can write to attorney-client privilege to the council members and the mayor, with the fear that many of the conversation could be put out there in the public. And it's not about conspiracy theories or about we don't want to be transparent. It's about that some of this information is, we are in litigations, and if we put some information, we can put the city in jeopardy. And this is what we want to make sure that we don't continue to do, whether it is the mayor or whether it is any other city council. And I think this will take us a shorter route if the mayor decides to take these e-forums down, but he has decided that he's not bounded by these rules and he can do whatever he wants and feels like doing. So this is my perspective about this whole situation. I wish we can now be in this situation, but we are here and we are taking some steps so we avoid putting the city in jeopardy. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from council members?
I just wanted to say, just my final thing is that this is also like this situation about the city attorney's difficult situation of being able to do her job. And I wonder that this could be also a reason for her not to be willing to continue with us, because it's just really difficult situation.
I had one final question for Heather. I believe earlier, Heather, didn't you say that I had been named as a witness?
So that was in the prior legal services agreement, not in this one for Myers-Nave, which is the lawsuit against you.
And I had been named as a witness.
Let's see. It appears from the paperwork that you will be named as a witness and adverse to the city.
I'll look forward to that. Okay, Councilmember Bates.
No, I'm finished.
Okay, all right. Do we have a motion? Maybe we already had a motion. I think we did.
The item.
Madam Clerk.
I don't have a motion written.
You don't have one, okay. Councilor Martinez, you're moving it?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, I second it.
Second by Jimenez. Would you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bates,
No.
Councilmember Jimenez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Johnson is.
This is
absent.
item E3, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry, item E4.
I'll abstain. I wasn't here for the conversation.
Okay. Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
and Mayor Butt.
No.
The motion passes with Mayor Butt and Councilmember Bates voting no and Vice Mayor Johnson abstaining.
Okay, the next item is item E5.
Item E5 is to receive a presentation on a draft summary proposal for a new citywide community benefits policy.
So staff report?
Yes, good evening, Mayor Butt and members of the City Council. On June 8th, the City Council directed city staff to begin soliciting feedback from the public and commence the development of a proposed citywide community benefits policy. As part of this process, it was requested that at least 2 presentations be provided to the City Council prior to the final presentation to enable direct community council and community engagement. The meeting this evening is to conclude the second community engagement effort. The consultants retained to commence this work are with us this evening and will be presenting a draft summary of the proposal and to receive direct direct feedback from you all to help inform the final ordinance, which we plan to submit to you all for consideration in January. Thank you. Julian, would you like to take it from here?
Yes, I'm happy to. Thank you, City Manager. My name's Julian Gross. I'm with the firm of Rennie Public Law Group. We're part of the consulting team that's been assisting the city on this. I think if we can start the PowerPoint, we can get this presentation going properly. Thank you. Thank you to the mayor and the council members for your interest in this issue, your participation in the process to date, which we'll go over just to recap for everybody, and for taking time at your special meeting tonight to talk about this issue. We really want to get your feedback so we can bring you an ordinance that hopefully will have broad support and really captures the thinking and the experience you all have as representatives of the city when you're looking at community benefits moving forward. So we go to the next slide. This is just our agenda item, one more after that. I wanted to introduce the consulting team. So again, I'm with Rennie Public Law Group. We are not retained as lawyers on this matter. We are consulting. We're helping with policy development and so forth. Also, a team member with us is Estelano Advisors. That is a well-established firm that's done a lot of work around the state on land use and development issues, racial equity issues, and community benefits. Cynthia Guzman and Ginny Brown and Pamela Leo have been staff. With the Rennie Public Law Group, we've got myself, a few others, and Talia Mirmalek, who we're going to hear from for a presentation of some of the slides tonight. She's a law clerk from Berkeley Law School that's been working with us very closely on this project. Next slide, please. All right, so this is how we're going to do this. We just sort of covered what the engagement is. Well, actually, so number one is we're going to talk about what the public engagement is and engagement with city actors to date that's been informing the policy development. Then we're going to go over the sort of framework we're using to talk about community benefits, what we're concentrating on with the first recommended proposal for you all, and then into some nuts and bolts of the proposal. And then we'll have time for your feedback and input, and hopefully have something, as I say, that has broad support that we can bring back to you in January for a vote. Next slide, please. All right, at this point, I want to turn it over to Talia, who's going to go over the community engagement and the conversations with city staff and city council that have occurred to date.
Great, thank you, Julian, and thank you, council members, for this opportunity to address you all tonight. My name is Talia Mirmalek. I'm a student at Berkeley Law and a law clerk at Rennie Public Law Group and a member of the consulting team on this project. So as you all know, community engagement is a key part of any policy development. And so today, my hope is to cover the community engagement that has occurred thus far. So on this slide, you will see there's a timeline of the community engagement. It captures both that which is done by city staff, as well as the engagement that we did in joint engagement that we did with them. So in early September, city staff presented to the Economic Development Commission. And then in October, we joined forces where the city held 2 engagement sessions open to the public. And we attended and were actively responding to questions and comments that folks brought up in the chat. A lot of people expressed strong support for community benefits and the policy. And I also wanted to flag specifically that people were particularly interested in a community benefit fund that developers could contribute towards. And folks also emphasized youth and local employment opportunities, as well as workforce development opportunities to have together. The next month in November, as you all know, the staff presented both to you all and then also to the Economic Development Commission. And they made 2 additional presentations to the Richmond Neighborhood Coordinating Council. Outside of all of these efforts, there's also a website that continues to collect input and solicit feedback. So if any attendees are listening, they're more than welcome to go to those. And we actually have posted on the website all of our materials, including the materials from the study session and the notes from the community input sessions. If you could go to the next slide, please. And then last but definitely not least, we have given all council members an opportunity for focused conversation with the consulting team about community benefit issues in Richmond, and we have spoken to several of you. We have also spoken to city staff from 6 city departments, including folks involved in development, procurement, and compliance. And yeah, and so with that, I will pass it back to Julian, who will be summarizing the recommended policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Talia. All right, next slide, please. As Talia mentioned, I'm going to go into the summary of the policy and an overview. So you've got materials in, I think, your agenda report, as well as an attachment that summarizes the policy in sort of a Q&A format. I don't think it's probably worth your divided attention to be drilling down too deeply on those. Basically, the substance of those, almost in toto, I'm going to be covering in the PowerPoint in the presentation for the next few minutes. Next slide, please. All right, so this is not the recommended policy itself. This is a overview of the framework that we've been using to think about community benefits. When we came onto this project and started talking with different people and even just reviewing the RFP that you released, it's clear that people have a lot of different things in mind when it comes to community benefits. And just to sort of organize our thinking and policy development on this for you, we divided the different types of benefits and initiatives and policies that people were interested in into these 4 categories. So we've got category 1, and I think this is the sort of main thing people think about when they think about community benefits, or CBAs, community benefits agreements, which is a very high profile tool related to community benefits and land use. These are community benefits provided by developers of large public-private projects. So this is where you can think of big projects like Campus Bay, like Point Malate, like the Richmond Global Campus, RIP. We're talking about large sort of anchor development projects that address a neighborhood and involve working with another entity and usually a private developer. And it's a negotiated process that takes usually several years to develop and sort of work up. And community benefits are often of great public interest and always part of negotiations around those projects. But really, we're not talking about the general regulation of things that happen in land use in the city. We're talking about negotiated large projects where there's heavy involvement from the city. Category 2 is community benefits required as terms of city procurement contracts. So that would be like if the city's releasing a contract and wants to apply its living wage policy to that, or a local employment policy, or a local business subcontracting policy, those kind of things. Those aren't really land use questions, right? Those are procurement questions, and you have power as the city when you're spending your money to set terms of behavior for the contractors that are entering into those contracts with you. Different category, category 2. All right, category 3 is often confused with category 1, but I think it's important to keep it separate conceptually. Category 3 is not a negotiation of a big project like a stadium or a mall or a neighborhood redevelopment or something, but it's rather the general regulation of land use and housing in a city is often thought about in a community benefits way, because there are impact fees that go with that. There are inclusionary housing minimums. There are linkage fees. Many people think of tenant protections as an important part of how we think of the community and land use. So that's a different category. That's regulation, lawmaking. You're not negotiating with anybody. You're just setting policy for the city and people who are developing property or operating property need to comply with those laws of your city. Category 4, we got several questions about community benefits funded through discretionary financing mechanisms like EIFDs, like CFDs, et cetera. So we haven't gone very deep on that, but that's a category that we could do later. So we could go to the next slide. Actually, 1 second on this slide, it doesn't matter. So the recommendation that we're bringing forth to you today for discussion, and that if you're interested, we'll be bringing to you to consider in January, is just category 1. It's sort of the top line community benefits approach or questions regarding these large projects that I think is what people are usually thinking of when they talk about community benefits or CBAs in land use development. So that's what we're going to be focusing on for the rest of these slides. I just wanted to put it in context of the other things that people might be thinking about community benefits. And after we've sort of given you all the advice and assistance we could with category 1, budget permitting and interest permitting, we're happy to do some policy development with you for some of these other categories if you want. All right, next slide. Thank you. All right, so this is, of course, our recommendation, but it's informed by a lot of work in this field for many years, decades for the consulting team, as well as the extensive conversations and public engagement that Talia mentioned. So what we're proposing really builds on a very strong policy that you have in place that I think is one of the better ones that I've seen in research and experience around the state and around the country, which is section 6.6 of your Richmond Bay specific plan. So that was put in place prior to the Campus Bay project moving forward, I believe. And that sets out, as you see in the first bullet there, some minimum sort of baseline community benefits commitments that are expected, and some enhanced procedures for consideration of these large public-private projects. So essentially, just as an overview, the proposal here, the recommendation that we're making is that you consider turning this approach that you have on the books in section 6.6 into a citywide approach for any of these large public-private projects that come forward. So again, this is not something where, you know, you're going to have 12 of these every year, these projects that are where this approach would be implemented. This is, maybe 1, maybe 2, I don't know, maybe there's a year where you don't have a project like this, but it's for big projects that are being negotiated and they need land or they need money from the city or something like that. And it would take the form of an ordinance that you would adopt that governs these types of projects in the future. Next slide, please. So we're going to leave time for Q&A on all this after we get through a few more slides. So the first question is what projects will be covered? As I said, it's not that many. It's the big ones, just to put it colloquially. So it would be covering all sort of large public-private projects. I think public-private projects is the term in section 6.6. But you're really just looking at sort of big private projects where at least one of the following conditions is met. Either they're receiving $100,000 in financial assistance from the city, or they're negotiating with the city over sale or lease of city-owned property, or they're entering into some other kind of voluntarily negotiated agreement with the city, like a development agreement where they're asking the city to freeze in place fees and rules around land use development. Sorry, it's my phone, turned it off. Or a subsidy agreement or some other kind of voluntary contract, like they want the city to build something, some infrastructure, something in support of the project. But the point here is these are large projects and they are negotiated. The developer is asking for something from the city. They're not just saying, I have land, I want to build, I'm building within the zoning and we're done. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the recommended policy would envision some baseline community benefits that would be required for projects meeting this category, and also some enhanced procedures, which we'll get to. And I think they're both really important. So I want to mention with regard to the baseline community benefits that you've already got a bunch of laws on the books that require community benefits for some projects in this category. You've got at least 4. I believe, local employment, living wages, ban the box / fair chance, and I think the green building, perhaps. But the way it works right now, those requirements that apply to these projects, there's a couple things with them that I think can be improved if they're consolidated into a community benefits policy in an ordinance like this. One is that there are different dollar thresholds and different sort of triggers for application of those different laws. So I think it makes a lot of policy sense to unify those things and be like, look, if you're getting this much money, several things are triggered. The other is that those provisions that apply these rules or requirements to these kind of projects are usually incorporated into a law that's really written for the procurement section, right? So it's usually a situation where you've got a living wage policy that talks about terms of city contracts, and almost as a throw in, it says, oh, and by the way, you have to comply with this if you are building a project that receives some money or negotiates a lease. Then there's a lot of questions about, well, is that just the developer's employees, or is it all the contractors, or is it the people who work in the project if it's got a bunch of jobs in it? So it's really not very sort of thorough the way it's written out. So it gives you a chance to refine that and think about how those laws should apply to these projects. So I want to really emphasize, I'm calling these baseline or minimum community benefits. It wouldn't make sense to think that right now in the abstract, you can write a law that is going to cover the field for what benefits a project should provide when you don't know anything about the project or what kind of project it's going to be. What this really does is set for a few things that are of evergreen importance to the city: local jobs, local job quality, the environment, et cetera, saying the expectation from the get-go for staff, for the development community, for the public, is that for these kind of projects, which you could call subsidized projects or public-private projects as we're doing, the expectation is that the project is going to deliver these benefits as part of the whole thing. So that doesn't mean you can't also negotiate additional benefits that are really relevant to that project or that are particularly needed at that time, or maybe there's a piece of land that's part of that property that would be a great spot for a playground or a health clinic. None of this makes it exclusive, but it does say the starting point is we're expecting on these types of projects that these certain community benefits are going to be delivered. Next slide, please. All right, so these are the existing city laws I mentioned. These are, I believe, the 4 that I mentioned with citations. You can see it's got sort of varying standards for these things. So we at least would recommend including these in the policy as the slate of baseline community benefits, standardizing the application threshold and doing a little work to think through how each one of these should apply to those types of projects. But it's definitely open for you to add other benefits that you want to see in projects like this, either as projects are developed, you're always going to have that opportunity, or at the front end if you want to set an expectation for other policy goals. Next slide, please. So a bunch of these things are, I've mentioned a couple of these things. What is the point of consolidating these things and having the baseline benefits be in a new policy that applies? One is, as I say, unifying the dollar threshold. Another is it gives you an opportunity to set up a community benefits fund. This was an issue that there was a lot of interest, or an idea, I should say, that there was a lot of interest in at the public input sessions that we held for this project. There are a couple good models around the state where a big project has been brought forward and they've set up a fund into which the developer or a local EIFD could make contributions, and then there's going to be some kind of public community oversight and involvement, maybe some involvement by community reps in decision making. You got to make sure there's conflicts of interest rules are all followed, et cetera. But there's a lot of different ways a fund like this could be set up. But you could have a fund that's established through this ordinance, or this ordinance could initiate the process of setting up a fund like this, where financial contributions could come in from multiple different public-private projects over time. You could also raise money from other sources like foundations and so forth. And you could really have a pot of money that can be used for varying different community needs. And it's an opportunity for the public to get involved in looking and recommending how those expenditures would work and making sure that those things happen. So that was of a lot of interest. It's a way to sort of consolidate the approach and hopefully build on that across different projects. You also could have metrics and data points to track the success of the policy and these benefits as projects are built. We can put in here for your consideration annual reports about how these things are going on past projects with regard to a fund like this. And then the policy would also, as I mentioned, initiate consideration of additional different types of benefits for whatever else you think is important for a particular project that comes forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so the above, there were two big categories, as I mentioned in the policy. One is baseline community benefits. The other is enhanced procedures. As I mentioned, you already have some baseline community benefits for these, but the enhanced procedures, I think you don't have anything like this for projects generally outside their Richmond-based specific plan. And we did a lot of research, as we mentioned in our first study session with you, about different models around the country for these types of community benefits. And we really are just recommending that you build on the model that's already on your books, which I think is very interesting and doesn't have some of the pitfalls of some of the models we saw. If you cast your mind back to, I believe it was late September, we talked to you about a very prominent model from Detroit, where there's essentially a requirement that community groups try to negotiate a community benefits agreement with developers of proposed projects. That's a super attractive notion in the abstract, but it falls down really quickly in reality. And basically they've implemented that for a few years and no one's happy with it. Not the proponents of it, not the developer, not the city staff who are asked to implement it. You can't really force negotiations where they aren't there. And so our recommendation is really to build on your existing policy, but do it in a way that instead of sort of teeing up negotiations that can be sort of surface level or insincere, it's rather to empower the council and the public and essentially the city to negotiate these things well and in a transparent way, and sort of tee you all up for success in negotiating the right slate of community benefits for projects that come forward. So to that end, the proposal, again, this is all essentially building on 6.6, is to slow the process down just a little bit and release a little more information publicly about the key issues that are of interest to the community on community benefits and are very often of interest to council members as well. So you would have a study session where you'd be looking at this, and before the study session, you would, staff would prepare a quote community benefits summary that provides a little more accessible explanation of what the project is, what the terms of financial support are that trigger this whole process, and a description of the community benefits that are terms of the project. And then that needs to come out a little before the study session so that the public and stakeholders can review it, council members can review it, and the study session can be real. I've certainly been involved in projects, when I'm working on behalf of stakeholders, but also when I'm working on behalf of public entities, where if it's all presented at once and the community benefits are sort of part of a big mix with a whole land use and real estate deal, it's very hard for even a council member that has a vote on the project to really drive anything in regard to the different community benefits, because it's all part of a big package and it's very hard to change any term in that package, even if you are one of the decision makers. Next slide, please. All right, so aside from those two things of getting information out early and having a study session and making that information in an accessible way, we also could have a mechanism where you could revise those baseline benefits that I mentioned. It may be that there's a project that's really good for the community, but there's one of the things that are part of your minimum benefits you envisioned that the developer is just like, hey, I can't do this one, or I won't do this one. I want to do this other thing that's different. And here's my case for why that's actually better for you for Richmond. And let's do it this way. It lets you revise in that case, but with full transparency and council approval. It would be a proactive matter with a statement of why you're changing the baseline benefits. I guess we can envision some very rare cases where the procedures described above might present some time pressure problems. I would hope that's rare. These projects take years to work up. And if you know all along what the rules are and that you're going to have to bring some information publicly, I would think everyone needs to plan for it. But just in case, you can have a mechanism for waiving those things. You also could, as part of this, and we'll give you some language on this for you to consider in January, if you've got competitive selection processes like RFPs or RFQs at the front end, you could have them submit a community benefits summary. So all the other processes I mentioned are sort of at the end of the negotiation when you're about to consider actually doing the project, approving the project and doing the deal with the developer. This would be something that would happen at the front end when you're selecting what developer you want to work with. It would get the community benefits issues front and center the way that we're talking about them being at the end, or at least daylighted and looked at in isolation from all the other stuff about the project. And then you could clearly have exemptions for projects brought forward by nonprofit or totally public development entities if you want. Next slide, please. So I know I've just been talking at you for God knows how long so far, but we're soon going to move into Q&A. We're hoping to get some feedback and direction from you. We've had a lot of or several one-on-ones. We're happy to continue those types of conversations to hear your perspective on these issues as we shape something to bring for full actual decision making. But we'd like to hear some tonight if that's possible. And then we'll be working with city staff and with the city attorney's office to get in front of you something in January that's based on all this input, if this is something you want to see. And then, as I mentioned, if all goes flawlessly and you adopt it with a beautiful unanimous vote, because you all agree on what would be terrific for the city, and you're interested in more work, we can look at those other categories of community benefits that I mentioned. So that's where we are at this point. I believe the next slide is Q&A.
Questions from council members or comments? Councilmember Willis. Councilmember Willis, go ahead. I think he's frozen.
Yeah, he looks frozen.
Other council members have questions or comments?
I'm sorry, I don't know if you called me. My stuff froze up.
Yeah, you were frozen. Go ahead.
Okay, let me try to get this out before I freeze again. Thank you, Mr. Gross. I did want to ask, I know you said like the first step would be to at least adopt baseline community benefits, which suggested was some of the items we already had on our books. I guess one thing that I do remember as a community benefit that I don't know is necessarily going to be in the baseline, but I am wondering if it can come up in future iterations as we start to build up, is depending on the project, job training community benefits. I know feedback I've heard over the years is sometimes businesses will come in, but they'll hire some of their own people or specific people using the excuse that residents or certain folks don't have the experience to work in this job. So job training, if things are coming in, is something that I'm wondering if that could be a threshold or requirement that we could put on as an ordinance. And before, I'll let that just be my question. And then in comments, I do think that if something can come back in January, maybe sometime mid to end, I'd be interested in at least adopting the baseline, but I would appreciate a one-on-one conversation too, because I don't think I've had the chance to do that, just to see what other feedback is out there and how this evolves getting to that vote. But my question's mainly around the job training requirement, if possible.
Can I reply to that? Yeah, so just to clarify what we're thinking of bringing in January. In January, we'd be bringing a citywide community benefits policy that both lists the baseline community benefits you want in there, which we were going to include consolidating the 4 that we identified that are elsewhere, but could also include things like job training money or whatever you want to put in there. So you'll have an opportunity in January, in the first thing we bring you, to add more things to the list of baseline community benefits, especially if we have a conversation offline and you want us to work up language a little better. So we could do that. The other thing I wanted to mention, and that what we bring, the citywide community benefits policy, will both have those baseline community benefits items and also the enhanced procedures. It would be one ordinance that covers both the substance with those benefits and the process that we'd be wanting to add. I also want to note that if you're thinking of job training, one model that I've seen is developers over a certain size are being asked to put money for local job training efforts. That money could go into the community benefits fund I mentioned, which then could be granted to different workforce development places over time, as opposed to trying to figure all that out now in an ordinance that you draft at this point. But we'll reach out to you for sure. And it looks like you're frozen again.
Councilmember McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Gross. I really, really appreciate all your work on this. And I think I first of all want to make a comment in that it is so helpful to have a process worked out in terms of community benefits. Because my experience over the past, however many years, it's been 13, 14 years, has been that too often certain council members or a small group of council members will meet with the developer at the last minute, come up with what they think is a good community benefits agreement. They'll bring it to the council on the same day as the project gets approved or is up for approval, and without any public process, and they just are ready to approve it. And this has happened in my experience on the council, a number of times, that these last 11th hour CBAs come forward from council members that they're prepared to vote on, and staff is often taken by surprise by what comes forward as well. So having a process in place is excellent. So what I want to, and I agree, this ordinance will be a great opportunity in January to get a baseline set of benefits in place. And, if we need to tweak more, like Councilmember Willis was suggesting in terms of job training, I think that's excellent as well. And one more thing that I just want to raise, and this might be something we want to include in as baseline as well, is, and maybe you already discussed this with the public and with staff, but we have what's called a business opportunity ordinance. And in it, it has certain requirements or certain points that a business will get if they have a certain amount of local subcontractors. So I was wondering if we have a big project, a big developer, and if we include any kind of requirement that they utilize local subcontractors. So that might be something we can consider, I guess, in January, or you might want to review a little bit with staff ahead of time and see if you think it's an appropriate thing to include as a baseline. I would be interested in hearing your take on that. And again, thank you so much for this process. It's really going to be helpful for all of us.
Just a very quick response. Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. I've really appreciated all the engagement that staff and council have shown with this process so far. You do have a business opportunity ordinance on. I believe that right now it only covers procurement, right? So it'd be the category 2 that we talked about, but there are a lot of cities that apply that ordinance in land use development, right? So just as an example, City of Oakland has a provision saying that in development agreements and so forth, it's going to apply that. There's a lot of details that have to be worked out about, how that would work. Is that construction? Is it operations? Are there thresholds? Is it negotiable? But it's certainly a topic that is, ripe for this kind of baseline benefit.
Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
Yes, Mr. Gross, I want to thank you for the time that you took out to meet with me. I thought it was very, very beneficial in my understanding. I'm curious about what sorts of Category 1 benefits could actually be part of Category 3. You know, the issue with the Category 1 is that there's as Councilmember McLaughlin mentioned, there's a lot of backdoor lobbying, you know, between council members and developers at the last minute. And I think it would be fair for that to not happen. And my other question, you know, I understood Melvin's workforce development as being something that should be in Category 3. But I was curious, with the development of the city, seeing a lot of people of color being forced out, is there any way that we could have reparations as a benefit, a community benefit, so that we could keep people of color in the city that they helped form?
Yeah, so that's something we would want to look at and talk with the city attorneys about, and figure out what could really be done in that regard in the other categories, as you say. I absolutely understand your notion that Category 1 is sort of not enough. I think, as I mentioned, you might only have one vote on that in a given year, whereas Category 3 is your overall regulation and so forth. So I think it sort of depends on what we're asking for and what city approaches are out there. I haven't worked on a reparations model. I know just, general knowledge of the field a little about it, but I certainly don't feel ready to opine on that for you right now. I will say the big difference for me between Category 1 and Category 3 is that in Category 1, we're negotiating, right? Like that's how it's set up, is by definition, the developer is asking for something from the city, and we're free to ask for whatever we want to make it a good deal back to them. Category 3 is just the city's regulation of land use. So there's a lot more rules there, right? So you have to comply with constitutional provisions around the takings clause. That's why you have to do a nexus study to make sure that the fees you impose are proportional to the impacts that they're trying to get at. So it's a lot more restrictive, but also maybe some would say in many ways more important because it covers so many more projects. And you do have broad police power as a city, despite the takings clause, to do a lot with regard to land use development in your city. And, I know you guys have a bunch of good ordinances in general, but, what you could do to make them even better, I guess that's a question I'd be happy to help you guys figure out in the next phase of this thing. So sorry, I can't speak more, eloquently or in a more informed manner on the reparations question.
Thank you.
Other comments from council members? Councilmember Jimenez.
I will keep it short. I think I just wanted to say thank you, Julian Gross, for the work that you are doing. And it's really important that we get this process. So the next developments, the community can be more involved. And we have, I think, like important thing that I get from what we have and what you are presenting is that with these, we can have a better process where it allows the community to be more involved. It allows to give the city council a pause to really think about what this negotiation looks like, what we are going to approve, and not just kind of like do it in the fly. And also to give, more time for the community to organize themselves to make this process more rich and at the end, like, supported of all the views. So thank you, and I think I look forward not only to this work, but all the categories, because I think like it's going to be important to have, to use the power that the city have in procurement and all the land use and other things to make sure that our community benefits from it. And not just outside consultants or outside businesses. I think like the city has a power that can be used to develop more and support more small businesses, more community in here. So looking forward to the next iteration of this work as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I certainly agree that a comprehensive community benefits approach for a city would involve looking at all these categories, seeing all the different types of city power that you have.
Any other comments? Do we have public speakers, Madam Clerk?
I do not see any public speakers for this item.
Whoa, not even Mark, huh?
Nope.
Okay, well, this is not an action item. It was a discussion. It'll be coming back in January. And unless somebody has something else on this item, I think we've run our agenda. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Does anybody have anything else we need to bring up tonight?
Yeah. Well, not for Julian. I just want to let my colleagues know that in your office from Holistic Healing is C's Candy, and I'm willing to pick it up for you while I'm here. No, I just wanted to tell everyone happy holidays. I know we have a meeting next week, but I know some people are in the throes of celebrating right now. Just wanted to, wish everyone a continued happy holidays.
Okay, do you deliver with candy?
I deliver it to my stomach, Tom.
Hey, Vice Mayor, if you want, because you brought it up to me, feel free to snatch the one out of my office and re-gift it.
I got you.
You can re-gift it to yourself or somebody else. I'll leave that up to your own discretion.
Okay. All right, anything else?
We're accepting candy at City Hall and the courtyard, as well as the Parks Department and Community Services and libraries throughout the city.
Okay, or gifts.
Okay, going once, going twice. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah.
Happy holidays. Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
We are adjourned. We meet another time.
Yeah, we have one more meeting, right, Mayor?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Good evening.